My name is Matt Jones. I'm a brand strategist by trade, and I'm one of the 3 co-founders of 4 Pillars Gin. It's always interesting to hear people sort of say nice things about the brand, because one of the things we talk about as a team is we want to be makers, not marketers. We don't want people to smell the marketing. Clearly there is marketing. Clearly a great product, no matter how great, it's not going to sell itself. But there's something about building a business around the principles of making and around the principles of craft, where you don't want people to be able to separate the truth of the business from the brand. So everything we do as a brand team, whether it's designing a label, whether it's creating a piece of content, commissioning photography, it's all just designed to do justice to the quality of the product. The quality of the product is at the heart of it. What Cameron, our distiller and my co-founder, does in the distillery, that's the heart. That guides everything. And everything else is just designed to amplify that, support that, bring people closer to that. And that's the key, I think, to the strength of our brand. So the biggest challenge for us is how we tackle Australia versus how we tackle the rest of the world. Because to be an Australian gin in Australia, at least for the first couple of years, was interesting. And Stuart talks a lot about this notion of being Australian isn't enough. You need excellence, and we're committed to excellence. I think the challenge is projecting that excellence overseas in more cluttered environments, in environments where there isn't an immediate curiosity and appetite. That's probably the big distinction. So we're focused a lot on how we sort of project what I call our trademark brand intimacy overseas, but we're not really focused on how to do that differently in different markets. I think we could very quickly lose our sense of ourselves. I think what it is to be modern Australian, to be creative, confident, diverse, serious about the gin, but not taking ourselves too seriously. I think that modern Australian attitude can be projected equally anywhere. My job is to figure out how to project that overseas, full stop, because that is a bigger challenge than doing it domestically. Being Australian is an advantage, but it's about being the right type of Australian. It's about being that modern, confident, diverse, creative, urban Australian brand. And so we talk a lot about benchmarks like Aesop and say we want to be like them, but we're not trying to be a cliched Australian. Stuart talked a bit today about the coffee culture of Australia and the way brands like Allpress are now projecting Australian coffee overseas. That's another great example of that modern Australian culture that we want to be part of. You have to have a theory of success with social media. You are not going to be able to measure your social media impact. You are not. But what you can do is figure out a theory of how is social media going to work hard for our business, and then you'll quickly be able to track, is this theory working? Just by talking to people, by looking at the way that people are interacting, the way people are responding, is it working? But you need a theory of success. So for us, we know that social media doesn't sell. We don't try and sell on social media. We try and build intimacy and community on social media, and then we move people towards joining our database. And it's through our email database where they're making that next step up in the relationship, which can become one that sells them more products. But social media for us is about relationship, intimacy, community. The second thing is executional. You've got to own your own social media. You don't outsource social media. For us, every single social post, every like, every comment, every reaction should feel like it comes from the distillery. The reality is it comes from one of 3 people who are probably sitting at home on their couch because it's 9 o'clock at night on their phone, but it feels like it comes from the heart of the business. It doesn't feel like it comes from an agency that's doing 4 hours of community management every day and getting up at 10 o'clock and quickly moving through. It's real, it's authentic, it's owned by us, and that's the biggest lesson that we've learned from an executional point of view. Look, we're a very old-fashioned business built on technology. It's a really interesting tension at the heart of our business. The way that we distill gin probably hasn't changed in 100 years, but the technology we then use to drive, yes, social media, to drive content, but also customer relationships, customer service, the actual technology we run the distillery on, all of that has given us an ability to build a world-class business at scale fast. The challenge, though, is to see technology simply as a platform. The reality is your customers aren't going to value technology, but they might value what you do with it, or they might value the fact that technology saves you time, which you can then spend in areas that the customer does value a great deal. I think technology is also a little bit of a threat. I think it's making it relatively straightforward now for people to build a pretty good business quickly, a business with the appearance of being solid and real, that appears to have sort of professional standards. So the challenge is to figure out what are you going to be great at, and what is technology going to do to help you achieve that greatness, to create that real experience, that real brand, that real story that customers value, and see technology as an enabler of that, rather than go, oh, that's great, that used to be hard, that used to be expensive, now it's quite easy and quite cheap. Partnerships with technology providers technology businesses are critical, and they're critical at the early stage. They're critical when you're defining what's possible, because you probably got into the business that you're in, whether it's the gin business or anything else, because of your passion for that category. You probably didn't get into that business because you were particularly passionate or knowledgeable about enterprise technology or cloud computing or social media publishing platforms or customer relationship management software, whatever it may be. So the challenge then is, if you define what you need technology to do, you're probably doing it in a very naive way. So the most important time to have that partnership is actually at the beginning, when someone can help you figure out, what could we do? What's possible here? How high could we aim? How much time could we save? And at the same time, how much money do we need to spend? Perhaps we don't need the gold-plated package over here because our business needs are quite simple, but we could then spend more of that time and money and resource over here because that's where our customers are really going to value it. So those partnerships are really critical, not just to execute, but to figure out what success could look like.